Right. Hello. I think we're going to give everyone a couple of minutes before we dive in, but excited to have you here, Caryn.
Thanks for having me, Ishvi.
All right, so let's just give everyone like a couple of minutes and then we will get going.
I am dialing in from Boston, Massachusetts. You're in London, right?
Yes, I am in London. And I was already saying, but for the early ones who've already come, what a great cardigan. What's the
Thank
story?
you. Yeah, this is Olympic issue 2012. You can't really see it on Zoom, but it says USA Olympic team.
I love that. I love that. I love great stash. I was going through some stuff and I've got like a cricket shirt from 2005 and I'm like, oh, I just can't throw it away. It's so good.
It's actually a little bit ridiculous how much gear, stash,
Yeah, I'm sure you got a
loot
lot.
that, yeah. I mean, you pretty much have to bring nothing with you because you arrive in the Olympic Village, or at least at team processing, which is nearby. And they give you about 3 large suitcases full of stash.
Hey, well, if ever you don't want some and you want to throw some my way, I love stash. And then which of all your uni teams would you say had the best stash?
Oxford, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I really love the hunter boots, actually.
Yeah, I like it. All right, I think we're at 12:02, so I'm sure people will keep rocking in. Thanks everyone for being here. Hi Sarah, thank you so much. So ask us questions. I believe Jeff, Director of Marketing, thank you for putting this together. He's left the chat open so people can like comment and meet each other, but ask us questions. And otherwise, I'm going to control the flow a little bit and see how we get on. So very quickly, Ishvi and CEO co-founder of OpenSporship, and I am super stoked to introduce Khan, who is our counsel, but today is way more than that. So Khan, I'll let you give your intro, and I'm sure if you understate yourself, I'm going to build you up even further afterwards, but over to you.
Okay. My name's Caryn. Well, first of all, as Ishvi said, I have a law practice. I am counsel to OpenSporship, but I am also a little bit of a maybe strategic advisor because I am an Olympian myself. I competed in 3 Olympic Games in 2004, Athens, 2008, Beijing, and 2012, London as a rower in the women's 8. And we won 3 medals. We won silver the first time, and then gold and another gold in 2012.
I love it. And then obviously there's also the big college element, which we will talk a little bit about college athletes, because maybe back in the day, you may have been sponsored as a college athlete had you been allowed to. So tell us also a little bit about your like college background as well. And then even how that compares to your Olympic experience.
Oh, yeah, sure. I rowed as an undergrad. I went to Harvard for undergrad, and we had to purchase our own gear. Some of it we had to give back, like some of it we got given, but we were supposed to give it back at the end of the year. And our competition gear, which we got all sweaty, nasty, and they didn't really want it back, we had to purchase it. So we were definitely not sponsored. I went to Columbia Law School. I rowed while I was there, but I did not row for Columbia because, as many of you are probably aware, you only get 4 years to compete as a university athlete in the United States. I then went to business school at Oxford, and the 4-year NCAA rule does not apply in the UK, so I got to row for Oxford. And that was a really cool experience because, so the Oxford-Cambridge boat race, the men have been racing it for more than 150 years. The women, the year I was there, it was the first time that we raced on the same day, the same course as the men, which is a big deal because there are more people that view the boat race on TV than view the Olympic rowing races on TV. So afterwards, I was walking down the street in London, and people recognized me. They say, "Hey, I saw you on TV. My daughter loves you," which never happened to me after an Olympic Games. So that was a really unique experience.
I love that. And obviously big shout out to my alma mater, Oxford there. So let's quickly, rowing, for those that don't know it, what position were you? What does it mean to row over eight, like eight? And then why did you even pick rowing of all the sports that I'm sure you're probably very capable of doing?
You're overselling me there, because the thing about rowing is you do it sitting down. So there's no chance of tripping and falling, which is really, I am 6'4". I was over 6 foot tall when I started rowing at the age of 12. Um, and I was just clumsy. So I found a sport that was just made for me. It's good to be tall as a rower. And I loved it because partly because I was good at it, but it also provides a really good community. I felt like I had finally found somewhere where I fit in. And as a 12-year-old girl, that's probably the most important thing. And honestly, I'm over 40 now, and it's still the most important thing to find your people. There was another thing that you asked me, and I've forgotten what it was.
That's perfect. I love that though. Okay, so coming on to the games right now. So you've done 3 Olympics. What would you, if you were going to Paris, what would you be doing right now? What are the rowing girls doing right now? How are they preparing? What's their
Oh,
psyche? And then I would parlay that into a bit more about like sponsorship and what that even
yeah,
means. Like,
yeah.
are the athletes thinking about sponsorship and brands, or are they like, absolutely not? I'd love to hear that.
Well, the Olympic team gets selected very shortly before the games. It was about 2 weeks before we left for the games that we found out who was actually going to be in the boat. Oh, I remember the question you asked me. I was a stroke seat, which meant that I set the pace for the boat. It's a bit of a de facto team leader, which was a really there's a lot of pressure on really everybody, but I felt like there was especially a lot of pressure on me. So there's a pressure to make the team right now. I mean, it's still months before they find out whether they've made the team. And then once you make the team, obviously there's the pressure to perform. And rowing, as you've probably figured out from when I said more people watch the boat race than the Olympic rowing events, it's not super popular. It's not we're not famous. And I think there's upsides and downsides to that. The upside is that that pressure is well, I don't actually know what the pressure is like when you're famous. I imagine it is less. It seems like, I mean, we all saw, right? So Simone Biles, like she had trouble dealing with the pressure, and I just watched that and I was like, man, yeah, that's got to be tough, because when you're toiling away in obscurity, um, it's just about you. And once you get more attention, then it becomes about more than you. So I did have a sponsor. So the company Shackley sponsored me and many of my teammates. And what was really wonderful about that is that company made it clear that they cared about us as people. And I think that rings true for the athlete being sponsored, but also the audience, right? Um, you want people to have an emotional connection with your brand. And you have an emotional connection with people, not with things. So the most important thing as a brand is to get athletes who can tell their story, who can tell your story, who can connect emotionally with people. And I think you don't necessarily find that in the athletes that are most famous. And like I said, our sponsor made it really clear that they cared about us as people, and that allowed us to kind of open up and tell our stories and connect with their distributors and their customers.
It's really interesting that you a few things there. You mentioned how you weren't famous because people don't watch rowing, and then also talk about the sponsorship. But today, I suppose the big difference between your time in the Olympics and today is social media.
That's a really
So
good point. Yeah.
I may not even watch someone's performance, but I might follow them on social media because of the personality they are. So I'd love to understand from what you're seeing in the around the Olympians today, or probably like what you thought of social media. I know we've discussed it in the past. I suppose it opens up a lot of opportunities for more brand dollars to come in, but it creates this new level of pressure. Like you're in the Olympic
Yeah,
Village to compete for gold, but you're also like, should I post today on social media? Like, what should I do?
right. It was interesting. Our coach actually instituted his own blackout period for us, where we were not allowed to. We were allowed to use social media, but we weren't allowed to do interviews. Starting around the time the team was named, and we actually kind of liked that. Obviously, it made it more difficult to tell our stories and connect with sponsors, but it took a little bit of that pressure off because it was just so easy. You didn't have to juggle when am I gonna do this interview? What do I have to say? Like it was just we are focused on what we are doing. And so my heart goes out in a lot of ways to the athletes now where there's a lot more pressure to connect with audiences through social media in your own way. And I think that it's just, I mean, we all know like social media, posting on social media is makes you feel very vulnerable. And one of the things I've learned over the years about that, the funny thing is the more vulnerable you are, going back to the emotional connection, the more vulnerable you are, the more people connect with you. So at first I thought I had to post all these things about how great things were and how wonderful I felt and how, we're doing so well and whatever. And I actually, one of the things I didn't include in my intro was I tried out for the team in 2020, which of course became 2021 because of the pandemic, but I tried out for Tokyo and I didn't make it. And the most powerful story that I have to tell is not about the time that I won gold twice. It's about the time I didn't even make the team, because that is so much more relatable and so much more just, it's me being vulnerable.
I love that. And thank you for that. In organizations, I'm sure many of the people here can, um, you know, uh, connect to this, but we talk about how like failure is such a natural part of every day. And I imagine when you're winning gold, you're literally like being crowned the best in the world. It's like, I am invincible. Tell us a little bit about that transition. I mean, obviously I saw it firsthand, but like, what was it like not being an Olympic athlete anymore and not
Oh,
having that excitement of the games and
yeah.
competition?
So before my first games, one of my teammates said to me, she kind of pulled me aside. She'd been to the games before, and she said, no matter what happens, win or lose, you will be depressed afterwards, and you need to have a plan for how to handle that. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Okay, cool. But she was totally right. And it doesn't, you could win an Olympic gold medal and you go home and the euphoria lasts for about 2 weeks. Someone said to me once, if I were you, I would never have a bad day. I would just go home and I would put on my 3 Olympic medals and I'd look at myself in the mirror and I'd be like, you're amazing. And I wish it worked that way because it doesn't. You reach this goal or not, whatever, but like either way, it's over. You've been working towards something for so long. And you think that your life is just going to be perfect after you get it, and then you achieve it, and you come home and you look around and you're like, I don't know what to do with myself anymore. And I'm still the same person with the same fears and insecurities, and I have this like chunk of metal, but like that doesn't define who I am. And I think that's another story that deserves to be told.
You know, I'd love to hear, what do you wish brands were doing with you today? You've got such a great story to tell. Like, do you wish that you were doing more speaking or that you were connecting to brands that you authentically use? Like, if you had your dream for sponsorship, what would it look like?
Mm-hmm. I love connecting with people and telling my story in a way that helps people. And that actually the pandemic really helped with that. Zoom really helped with that because there's only so much traveling and appearances you can do, but I can do things like this all the time now. And it's when we log off today, I'm gonna have a big smile on my face for the rest of the day. And I'm gonna have an even bigger smile if anyone out there, if anything I said spoke to you or helped you, send me a message, LinkedIn, wherever, send me a message and let me know. Like that's the biggest reward for me of being an athlete. It gives me a platform to share my story and to connect with people.
I love that. I know we talked a bit about the failures, but I'd be remiss not to ask you, what is it like winning the gold medal in the Olympics twice? Like, which one did you enjoy more? And give us a sense of, like, do you believe it? Do you pinch yourself? Like, tell us a bit about it.
The first gold that we won was, we were favorites, so I don't want to say it was unexpected, but it was like the US team had not done that for over 20 years. And when we crossed the line, the thing is, rowing is a very painful sport. So when we crossed the line, I wasn't even able to celebrate. My teammate behind me, she went to hug me, and I was just like in so much pain from the lactic acid that I shouted at her, "Don't watch me." But then we got up on the medal stand and it kind of started to sink in. And interestingly, our coach had made this speech to us before. He said, he was trying to take some of the pressure off. He said, "This is just like any other race you guys have rowed. You guys, you've done world championships, you've done world cups, like just go out there and do what you always do." And we were like, "Yeah, that makes sense. Sure. Yeah." Well, afterwards, he met us at the dock as we were pulling our boat in, and he said, "Remember what I said about this being just another race? That was bullshit. This is the bleeping Olympics, and you just won a bleeping gold medal." So that was my favorite. The second gold medal, there was a lot of pressure because we had been winning. We were on a winning streak for, it lasted 11 years, starting in 2008. But that one, I just kind of felt like, don't screw it up. So the biggest emotion I felt after crossing the line was relief. Like, oh, we did what we came here to do. We didn't screw it up.
Yeah, that makes me a bit sad, but I can believe it. You mentioned your coach a couple of times. Maybe give us, like, was it the same coach for both Olympic, well, for all three Olympics?
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, so probably a big person in your life. Would love to hear any tidbits. If we're all, it's the middle of March, some of us are enjoying spring, some of us still have bad weather, economy looks crappy, political's bizarre. Give us some motivational stuff that you've learned from your coach to keep you going.
For sure. This piece of advice actually came from our sports psychologist that we worked with at the Olympic Training Center. So I was going into, like, it was about 6 months before the 2008 games. And I was really struggling because my performance was very up and down. It was inconsistent. And I would get really nervous beforehand, and then I would get really down on myself afterwards if I didn't have a good performance. And he said to me, "Don't aim to have your best performance every day. Just aim to beat your average, because if you can do that, you will consistently improve." And that just took all the pressure off, because I was like, oh, and every time I go to the start line for a training session or a race or whatever, I know that I can do this because I only have to be average, my own average, right? Which is still pretty good. But and then once the pressure was off, the tension was gone, and I started to be both more consistent, and I just got better a lot more quickly. So you mentioned it's kind of spring, we're all coming out of winter. Like, we were still coming out of like an economic slump. You might kind of feel like, oh, now's the time, I got to seize the chance, I got to go. But remember, this is the long game, that the consistent effort beats amazing pushes any day. You just got to show up consistently.
I love that. And I'd love to hear, obviously, as an athlete, it's probably easier to measure, right? Times and strength and all of that. Now in your life as a lawyer, do you apply the same principles, and how are you kind of measuring that you're beating average in your day job?
I mean, you'll be amazed the number of different ways we can find to measure ourselves. Like, we don't even know we're doing it. Remember, we were talking about social media, right? And you don't even know you're doing it, but I know we're all checking, like, how many likes did I get on that? So in a lot of ways, it's almost like you have to be careful what you measure yourself by, because what you measure is what it's with. We talk about that with motivating employees too. Like, you got to be careful what incentives you set, because the things that you measure are the things you're going to start getting more of. And I actually had to to kind of cut back on social media because I realized that I was starting to measure myself by what others thought of me, or specifically what others thought of my posts. So I encourage you to, everyone in the audience, just to take a step back and think a little bit about like, what do I really care about? And then try to start measuring that. So I had a baby recently, and we have this app that tracks everything he does. And so I started tracking like the number of minutes in a day that I read to him. And it got a little overwhelming. I had to cut back a little bit on the tracking. But
I love
yeah.
that. Which app are you using?
Oh, well, they're not sponsoring me. I don't know if I should say their name, but I use Tally Baby Tracker. So
we can try and use it to get you a sponsorship, Anne.
That's a really great idea.
I love it. Okay, we'll come back to you and your story, which I would love to just keep talking about. But I know there are some people who've tuned in to hear about the ins and outs of sponsorship. So you're the best person. You've been an Olympian. You've got some ideas. You're very smart, but also you're a lawyer. So you're going to give us a bit of good advice. And I know that you're going to tell us if you don't know. So feel free to drop us questions. But I know that we sent over a couple in advance. I'd love for you just to talk through maybe like 5 minutes of like the do's and don'ts, recommendations, and the bits of like definitely stay clear. And there's a lot of gray now where there wasn't before, mostly again because of social media. So I'll give you the floor for that.
Yeah. So for do's and don'ts, first I just want to start out by talking about like less the legal rules and more just the how to work well with an athlete. And I mentioned that our sponsor made it clear that they cared about us. We were always talking about family. And it's probably because they hired a consultant who is an athlete himself to manage the program. But they were very supportive and also very respectful, especially as we were like ramping up for a competition. The funny thing is, of course, as a sponsor, like competitions are very important to you. You want your athlete to be showcasing you, but you also have to remember that they have a job to do, right? Like you don't want them to be thinking about you, right? As they shouldn't be thinking about what brands they should be representing. They should be focusing on what they're doing. So I remember I arrived in the Olympic Village and there was a care package from my sponsor, but after that, like, did not hear from them for the rest of the games, and that was wonderful because they were like, we're just going to let you do your thing. And so make it easy for your athlete, like set everything up way in advance so that they don't have to think about it when they're in their competition mode. And of course, the better they do, like the more they can focus, the better you look as a sponsor. So just think ahead. And that goes, of course, back to the don'ts. Don't distract your athlete. Don't contact them with questions. Absolutely not. Like they do not want to hear from you unless they're your best friend, but then contact them about other stuff. And absolutely do not try to push the limits of the marketing rules. Athletes can get disqualified. I think that's very extreme. It's unlikely to happen, but if they catch a whiff of like my sponsor is violating the rules, it's going to stress them out a whole lot. So don't push the limits. And if you're wondering, I'm going to go through what the limits are in just a second. But if you're ever wondering what the limits are, at least in the United States, you can always contact the USOPC. That's the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. They have a website, explains all the rules to you. And when you're in doubt, you can email them. This is on their website, but it's rule40compliance@usopc.org. You can email them like a example of whatever you're thinking of posting or the marketing campaign you're thinking of running, and they can give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down. So now going into the rules, the biggest one that you'll hear about when it comes to the Olympic or Paralympic Games and sponsoring athletes is Rule 40. What is Rule 40? So Rule 40 is actually a rule that the International Olympic Committee made. It's in the Olympic Charter. And it basically says that during the games, and a little bit before and a little bit after, it starts 8 days before the opening ceremonies and ends 3 days after the closing ceremonies. During the games, there is no marketing allowed, at least none that is in the Olympic venues or uses the Olympic IP, like the rings or the name Olympic Games or the medals or whatever. Now, official sponsors are allowed to do their thing, but I think that probably we're the official sponsors are probably not watching this webinar. Hello. So yes, I mentioned this blackout period, and it's very restricted on the things that you can do. Marketing is allowed, but only very specifically. And this is actually a change. It used to be before about 2015, sometime between London and Rio, the rules changed because, like you mentioned, Ishveen, of social media and athletes saying, "Hey, I'm very active on social media. This is how I make my living. I gotta be able to do something, right?" So this was kind of a compromise. So there are two things that are allowed. One is generic marketing of products not referencing the games or Olympian, Paralympian status. So as an example, but you can kind of like obliquely mention it. So as an example, you can say our product is made for champions, and you can have a picture of your athlete, but you can't say our product is made for Olympians, and you can't, that picture of the athlete, they can't be like wearing an Olympic logo or something like that, right? So generic, not explicitly associated with the games. You can also have generic athlete recognition. So you could say, go get them in your final tomorrow, Caryn. That's obviously referencing the games, right? I'm competing in an Olympic final tomorrow. But you can't say something like, you're going to do great in your final tomorrow because you use our product, right? You can recognize the athlete, but you can't associate the athlete with the product. Now, this is all during the blackout period. You can do those things before and after the blackout period. So one of the biggest things that I advise brands and athletes to do is think ahead. You can tell all those stories and you can mention like all those things that I just said you can't mention, not in the blackout period. So if you've kind of set the stage, if your athlete already has a long history of being associated with your brand, then during the blackout period, if I win a gold medal and someone goes to my website or my social media feed, they can see all that stuff that was posted in past, right? So it doesn't mean that you can't be associated with that athlete during the blackout period. You just can't like put a big neon sign up during the blackout period.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, of course.
So we had a come through the chat, and I have a couple as well. Are things like Team USA okay? I imagine not, because that's probably trademark, right?
No, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff like that you would actually be surprised that you cannot say. There was a big controversy, I think it was during Rio, where people were saying summer and like the summer, I don't remember what it was, but like because it's the Summer Olympic Games and the Winter Olympic Games. And so people were getting in trouble for saying summer, competition, or I don't even remember what it was. You can't say things like Team USA, you can't say things like gold medal. So yeah, it's kind of surprising the things that are restricted, and that's why I say when in doubt, just run it by the USOPC. And actually, that brings me to another thing. Brands before, actually, really, there is no deadline, but like as soon as you know that you're sponsoring an athlete who's made it to the Olympic or Paralympic Games, you need to fill out a personal sponsor commitment form that is on the USOPC website, and that kind of like tells them, hey, I exist and I'm going to be doing this. So when you do that, it gives you a lot of the rules and it tells you what to do if you want to get something approved. So when in doubt, get it checked.
Love it. Thank you. Very nuanced. I don't know if you'll know the answer to this. So if I've created content with an athlete pre-blackout period, can I use it in paid ads? Like
Oh
boost,
yeah, that's
because I'm not technically posting a new thing. It's just running in my paid ads.
yeah, that's another thing. You cannot explicitly like boost, pay to, post, boost, whatever during the blackout period. It has
Okay,
to, all the dissemination growth has to be organic. You
interesting.
can't like how, you can't do targeted ads or anything.
I wonder how they're going to monitor that, but you're a lawyer. We're not going to get into that bit of it.
This is all,
Um,
yes, this is all very legal advice. Actually, it's not legal advice. Let me just
yeah, it's not legal
I
advice.
should say that I am not giving legal advice because there's all sorts of rules about how you have to be my client in order for me to give you legal advice. So I am giving general advice from a legal angle.
So funny. I prefer
There's
you as a
also
robocall.
practical advice and there's you all have to decide on what's practical.
I love it. Okay, perfect. Okay, we had a question from Meredith. Is there a difference between a general product, such as Coca-Cola, that isn't associated with performance versus gear that is using during the event, e.g., wearing a visor or headband brand? I suppose because
No.
if you pay someone to wear headphones and then I've always wondered this, like the swimmers that come out wearing their headphones, like if they're not sponsored,
Yes.
they can still wear it, I presume, even if they are sponsored, if
There, even
that's
if there, yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. Well, first of all, Coca-Cola might disagree with you about whether it's performance enhancing. Here's a story that really demonstrates the power of advertising. So I don't generally drink soda. I just don't, it's not healthy, whatever. I don't, and that's why we don't generally associate it with performance, right? But Coca-Cola is an official Olympic sponsor. So you go to an Olympic venue and there are Coca-Cola ads everywhere, and there's free Coca-Cola in all the fridges. By the way, everything's free in like the Olympic Village. You just take whatever you want if you're an athlete. So we finished our competition and got our medals, and we were heading to the press conference, and I had this moment where I was like, oh my God, all I want right now is a Coke. I'm so thirsty and all I want is a Coke. And I was like, that's really weird because that thought has never occurred to me before. But after spending like 3 weeks steeped in Coca-Cola marketing, I really wanted Coke. And at that moment, it was performance enhancing because I'm sure it made me do a better job at the press conference. But oh yeah, so anything, if you tell the right story, right? Going back to the stories, if you tell the right story, anything is performance enhancing. My journal here, like that's performance enhancing because I work through my emotions and I have a better performance because I work through my emotions, right? But anyway, so wearing things, there's very specific rules about the logos that could be on your uniform and the size. So athletes can use the gear that they want to use. Like here's an example. Ray-Ban sent us, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't Ray-Ban, Rudy Project, another R. Rudy Project sent us free sunglasses before the games. And they were kind of like, use it if you want. We'd love to see you wear it. You don't have to, whatever. And I happen to really like the sunglasses. So I wore them. And they have their little Rudy Project logo and there's some really good close-up shots of me in the Olympic final wearing their sunglasses. And I'm sure they loved that. And that is allowed because it was just that, I mean, it's tiny, right? But it was a close-up, but it's a really tiny logo and it's just the normal manufacturer's logo. It's not like I am sponsored by, it was just like, these are the things that I'm wearing. But you
So
can't, yeah.
if you had been paid by that brand, the sunglasses brand, then you'd still be allowed to wear it, right? But you just have to fill out the form and obviously not post on social. So you couldn't do anything like
Right.
on social media external, but you could wear the product.
Yes, and I couldn't. So, I could wear the product. It could have its normal logo. I could, interestingly, you can post on, like I could have posted a photo of myself wearing that product, but not in competition because I can't post the photo of me in competition in I can thank my sponsor. I can say thank you. And by the way, they don't have to pay me cash, value in kind. If they give me product, that's technically they're sponsoring me, right? So I could say thank you, Rudy Project, but I cannot mention the product. I cannot say thank you, Rudy Project, for my sunglasses, which helped me win. I can just say, they can say good luck and I can say thank you, or, thank you for your support. And I can post a photo of like me like in practice, weeks before wearing their sunglasses, but I couldn't post a photo of me competing because all the images from the competition are owned by the IOC. So that's IOC property.
Interesting. So when you went out into the boat, are they like, you can't wear those sunglasses?
I can wear them, but I couldn't. And other people can like Getty Images can take photos of me wearing the sunglasses. They're not going to mess with whatever the gear you need to compete in. They're not going to say you can't wear that because they're my sunglasses. I got to wear them. But another the official Olympic photographers can take photos, but I couldn't take a photo of myself at the venue wearing the sunglasses and post it on social media.
Perfect. And then we've got a lot of food and beverage brands. So can you take snack bars and be walking around the Olympics Village, eating, like, if someone had gifted you?
Or you can eat them, but I couldn't take a photo of me eating it in the village and post it because the village is also an Olympic venue.
Considered competition. Great.
But interestingly, so if I was outside of the venue, if I was just like, say, walking around London, eating my snack bar, could I post that?
During the blackout
I'd have to think about that. Yeah, I don't know if I could do it during the blackout period because it's a fine line between, thanks for your sponsorship and thanks for this I don't want to say candy bar. Thanks for this snack bar, because it's like clearly, if I'm clearly like noshing on the snack bar, then I'm essentially thanking them for the snack bar. I would run that by the USOPC.
Cool. Okay, we've got one more question. Thanks to Amanda. So if the team isn't named until 2 weeks before the games, this is a great question. And I've got another one on the back of this. Is that too late to submit your personal sponsorship to the USOPC?
No, you submit it anytime. I mean, yeah.
What's your recommendation to, I remember there was a time, this is, OpenSporship, we call ourselves lastminute.com. So that's why we're great because as soon as the teams go live, we can still do a deal. But I remember once I spoke to, I think it was Bridgestone, who were an Olympic sponsor. And of the 5 athletes they'd picked to be Team Olympics, 3 of them hadn't made it. And that's probably destroying, right, for them because they've invested all that money and whatever else. So what do you suggest is the right balance? Because if it's only 2 weeks before, you don't really have that much time to do all the building up. So do you only lean on the people who are like the obviouses, but then they're the most expensive?
Yeah.
Give us your strategy if you were thinking about this.
Yeah. I'm a little biased because again, I'm, none of my teammates are famous. And so we don't fall into the category of the expensive ones. And actually, interestingly, one of the ways that brands have gotten around that Rule 40 is they hire the really famous people, right? Because if you post a photo of Michael Phelps, you don't have to say he's an Olympian. You don't have to say any of those prohibited things. Everybody just knows, oh, I know what he's famous for, right? But like you say, he's also very expensive and not always the most powerful story because people have heard it, right? I think, and it takes some work and it takes some relationship building and it takes some trust. But some of the most powerful stories are the people that no one's ever heard of. But you have to build that relationship. You have to find them early. You have to get to know them, get to know their stories. And yes, some of them aren't going to make it. But remember, I said the most powerful story I have is the time I didn't make it. Now, of course, it helps that I already have 3 Olympic medals. So that gives me the credibility to talk about how hard it was not to make it and how I got through it and what I did and the relationship, how my relationships changed and my thinking changed. But just because an athlete you've decided to back doesn't make the team, doesn't mean they're not valuable to you. And in fact, if they're not competing in that games, Rule 40 does not apply to them. So they could be like in the background, they could be like, and they might know a lot of the people who are competing, right? So they can give you like inside tidbits. They can be commentating. They can be helping you create your brand strategy, story, whatever during the blackout period.
Love that. And in fact, we just got a question about this from Haley again, which was, are there any rules around Olympians who aren't competing? Or are they okay as long as we follow the guidelines you mentioned?
Yes. So, I mean, there are still rules that apply. As an example, the Olympic branding belongs to the IOC, and it's licensed to the USOPC. But you can't just like slap Olympic rings on all your products as an extreme example, right? Like you can't do that anytime, blackout or not. But there are things you can do. So if I am an Olympian, obviously I'm retired, I'm not competing in any of the upcoming things, but if you were able to say, I'm running a webinar with an Olympian who is also a lawyer and done a few things, you can say that this is, I'm associated with the Olympian if that is part of the bio of the person. Now it's a little nuanced because you can't just be like Olympian, Olympian, Olympian. you have to say this person, she's an Olympian and she's a lawyer. And you also mentioned an award I had received recently. So it has to be like a part of this whole person that I'm associated with.
Got it. Yeah, I love that. If you were talking to brands today and they're like, okay, great, so we get it. Let's sponsor the not Michael Phelps, maybe because of budget, maybe for any other reason. There's a lot of Olympians out there. There's a lot of sports. Of course, authenticity is key. And, ideally, like if they're a mom and you've got a mom product or whatever else, are there any other things that you think make a good sponsoree, like make a good sponsored athlete?
Yeah, well, side? I think a lot of it depends on what your go-to-market strategy is. Like if you are primarily targeting customers through social media, I'm not going to be the person you want to sponsor. I have like 900 followers. You're probably not, unless all 900 of my followers are really highly likely to purchase your product, right? But that's another thing. Whereas a lot of the kinds of companies that hire me, they might want me to come inspire their employees, or they might be selling inspiration in some way, and I can speak to that, and then so they like I can say the message, but they can get the message out because I only have 900 followers. So it depends on who you're trying to reach and how. And I think a lot of when you're trying to work with athletes who aren't famous, it takes a little bit more creativity. Because you can't just ask them to post something and have it reach 1 million people instantly. You have to figure out how to help them get the message out.
I will say as a company that helps many brands sponsor not the most famous athletes, the joy of seeing your athletes do well in competition is always there. And I know like we've got a brand who recently sponsored some, like I think it was X Games, and they both won gold, and that was amazing. I remember one time in the Winter Olympics, we had this athlete, Chris Master, who was the first.
I love him. He's so nice.
Yeah. And then after that, he went on to, dancing on ice, I think it was. And
yeah, he like became famous overnight.
Yeah. And there was so much joy. I mean, and we were doing deals for him for like $250. Actually, on that note, would love to ask you, I think sometimes, we've talked about this, like budget, like, and how much will people take? And you even said like product. So realistically, you've got into the Olympics, like, are you doing stuff for free product if you love it? Like, how do you think about cost today? Because we do tell everyone, like, there's someone out there for you at any price range. What are your thoughts around that?
I think if you're on a real budget, giving people product is probably the best way to go. But my coming from an athlete's perspective, the most respectful thing you can do that will build the most loyalty is to give them free product and just say you don't have to use it. You don't have to tout it. You don't even have to use it. Just if you like it, please use it. Remember, I was saying that's what Rudy Project did. They're like, you don't have to wear it if you don't like it. And I did because I liked it, right? And all they gave me was a pair of sunglasses. It probably didn't even cost them that much, right? I don't know how much sunglasses cost to manufacture, but I don't think it's very much. And they just gave them out to everyone on the team, and only a few people wore it. But like I said, there's some really great images of me in the Olympic final wearing that, using their product, and because it was like so. It obviously wasn't altruistic. They wanted me to wear it, but it just felt very respectful the way they did it. And that like I said, that creates loyalty, and that creates authenticity, because I was only using it because I liked it. And customers aren't dumb. Like, they know that especially the famous athletes are getting paid a lot to use those things, and secretly, like behind closed doors, those athletes might not even use those brands. Like I've seen with shoes, like athletes they'll prefer one brand, but they're sponsored by another brand, so they wear this slip cover over their shoes with the logo of their sponsor brand, but the shoes underneath aren't even that brand. People aren't dumb. Like, they know that that's happening. And if you can find athletes that like actually genuinely like your brand, they will be much better at promoting your brand, especially in situations like interviews, press conferences afterwards, right? Like, then people will know when they really genuinely thought that your product helped them win.
I love that. On that note, going back to like food, non-NSF certified foods, or non-FD, like, do you know anything about the regulations that you can and can't use? Love to hear.
Right. Okay. So NSF, I forget what it stands for, but just for people who don't know what that is, supplements. So athletes have to do drug testing, and supplements are not regulated by the FDA. So you don't know what's in there unless it has this certification, which basically says that there is nothing. It's a certification that says there's nothing in this supplement that is banned in competition, or out of competition for that matter, but banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency. As an athlete, I would only ever use an NSF supplement, because it's strict liability. What does that mean? If I took a supplement that was tainted with a substance that is banned, and then I tested positive, it doesn't matter that I didn't know that I was taking a banned substance. If I test positive, I'm out, right? So like, it's not worth it to me to put anything in my body that I don't know whether I could be disqualified for it. Having said that, I think your question was, as a non-NSF certified brand, can you work with an athlete? I mean, yes, if the athlete is willing to take your supplement, if you can convince them that it's safe. I mean, or I guess I wouldn't recommend this, but you could ask them to endorse your product without using your product. But then then we don't have that authenticity that I just talked about, that I think is so important. So yeah, it's tough.
Are there any other licenses apart from NSF that you look to for that?
To see if a product is safe?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of.
Interesting, because it's very expensive to get NSF certified. So we meet a lot of companies who are like, we're perfect, but it's just expensive.
Right. Yeah, you'd have to convince the athlete that it is safe. And maybe there are tests that, you can test a product without getting it certified. So maybe if you can show the athlete, like, here are the results of our tests, but it's tough, because like I said, as an athlete, I wouldn't be willing to take a chance.
Yeah, no, makes sense. We have a question from Jolene, which is funny because obviously I'm hoping you're going to say open sponsorship is the answer, but I'll allow you to be impartial. So what is the best way to contact the athletes to give free items to?
Yeah, I mean,
Thanks.
there on
Well, I
open
mean,
sponsorship. And if
you
an
know,
athlete, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was going to say, like, obviously we know that there are a lot of people who are like, well, I could just DM people. So like,
Hmm.
as an athlete, obviously one of the things that we do is like that security around like, hey, it's a good product and you're going to receive the product. And then, ideally there is some sort of deliverable, but like, do you feel like today athletes are getting DM'd a lot? Are they managing their social inboxes or how are athletes feeling about being contacted?
Um, yeah, it's going back to being respectful. Um, Getting solicited when you're not looking for it or ready for it or in the right headspace can feel icky. Which is the nice thing about something like open sponsorship is an athlete that signs up is saying, I'm open to proposals, and it is in this like contained safe space where I can evaluate them and compare them and see what's going on. And it's not just like coming at you from all directions, because it can be stressful.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. And then I know we've only got 8 minutes left. I love talking and thinking about the Paralympics as well,
Yes,
because
great
we've done a few
stories.
deals with Paralympians, great
Hmm.
stories. We were looking at tickets for Paris Olympics, and someone in the group was like, "Should we just go to the Paralympics?" I was like, "Well, it's not just; it would be an amazing experience, but it's accessible, it's exciting, it's got great stories." Thoughts on the growth of the Paralympics? What more can we see? And again, like maybe a little bit about like why brands should or could sponsor
Hmm.
Paralympics,
Yeah,
Paralympians.
yeah, Paralympians. Back to really what I said right at the beginning, which is that people connect with people, and they do that through stories. And some of the coolest, most interesting people that I know are Paralympians, right? And they have stories that I think I have some great stories, but I know Paralympians with way better stories than mine. And again, they're not always winning. There's a lot of there's a lot that goes into winning at the Paralympics. Um, so don't limit yourself to people that are necessarily going to be like shown on TV. Like um, there's an athlete that I know who's a Paralympic rower, and one of the interesting things about rowing at the Paralympics is the field tends to get very spread out because the races just take longer. And so that's longer time to do this. And if the camera is focusing on the person in the lead, like you don't even, a lot of the people who are not winning, like barely get any time on camera. Uh, but that doesn't matter because it's hard to tell a story over the course of a race. Like the story is in all the other things that they do in their life and how they got to where they are. Um, so yeah, I thumbs up, definitely consider sponsoring Paralympians.
Love that. Thank you. So we've got 5 minutes left if anyone has a question. If not, I'd love to go back to you as an Olympian and just hear any more fun stories that you love sharing, especially around the power of like, why should we sponsor Olympians? It's every 4 years. I mean, it's so different to anything else out there. Love to hear anything you can share.
Yeah. Well, I guess I keep mentioning the most powerful story I have is the time I didn't make the Olympic Games. So I will tell that story. I came out of retirement. So I retired after 2012 and became a lawyer, and then came out of retirement because I realized, like, well, first of all, I'm still young enough and fit enough that I could make another go at it. And I just felt like I hadn't given all that I could give to the sport, to the community. I was a little older, I was a little more mature. I really wanted to be like a mentor. on the team. So came out of retirement, showed up at the Olympic Training Center, and it wasn't at all like I had imagined it would be in my head. I wanted to like take these women under my wing and be like, let me show you how it's done. But the problem was they were all faster than I was, and I was intimidated. So, I showed up and I was like, so I kind of just like withdrew into myself and just was very quiet. And in my head, I was like, all right, I'm just gonna like prove myself, and then I can be, be this person on the team that I wanted to be. But it just didn't play out that way. And when the pandemic hit and the Olympics were postponed, I had this moment of reckoning where I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. Like my goal had been to be a really good teammate and to just like really learn and soak it all in. But I'm not having fun, and I'm not being the teammate that I hope to be, and I'm not contributing. So maybe I should just quit. And then I thought about it, and I was like, well, all right, I've been given a do-over. Like this extra year actually gives me a chance to fix the mistakes that I made. And so I spent that summer of the pandemic training at home by myself, and called every single one of there were about 30 women at the training center, and we were training on our own. And I called every one of them and asked what I could do to be a better teammate. Made myself very vulnerable because a lot of the things that I heard were very difficult to hear. Some people said, well, we think that you're entitled. Like you just show up here and you just act like you're going to make the team no matter what. And I was like really surprised by that, because I didn't think that that's not how I felt. But what I realized was because I had been so scared, because I had been shy and quiet, they took that as me being aloof, and they thought that I was just like, whatever. I'm just gonna make it. I don't have to interact with these people. I'm good. So I worked on myself, and I worked on stepping more into that role, reaching out to people, showing how scared I was that I wasn't going to make the team, that I wasn't fast enough. And gradually things started to change, and people started to, I started to integrate more into the team. And then I got injured. It was January of 2021, and I hurt my shoulder and I couldn't row. And it was 3 months that I couldn't row. And I was working physical therapy, doing all these things. And in the meantime, I was riding the exercise bike, trying to stay fit. I was in the back of the boat bay, just like riding this bike, like sweat pouring down my face, like just eviscerating myself in this effort to like salvage this effort, this salvage this year that I had committed to. And meanwhile, my teammates, they'd like walk in and they'd pick up the boat and they'd walk out of the bay door into the sunlight. And I would watch them and just feel like I was watching this dream of competing at a fourth Olympic Games just like recede into the California sunlight. And I did get back in the boat, but by then I had lost too much fitness, and it was really clear I wasn't going to make the team. So, but yeah, and I really thought about quitting. Like for about 2 months, like every week, I was like, maybe I should just quit. I'm not going to make this team. But I kept coming back because I was like, my goal was to be a good teammate, and I can still do that even if I don't make the team. So I would just show up and make it clear to everyone, I am here just to help this team get better, to help you all do what you need to do to be your best in Tokyo. And then eventually, coach called me into his office, same coach that I'd known for 20 years, and he said, I'm sorry, but this is it. I have to cut you. And I hate to do this because I know you're a great athlete, but you're just not there. So, you're going to have to go home. But he said something I didn't expect. He said, a lot of these women, they don't yet know what it means to be an Olympian. Some might never know. But your actions the last few months supporting this team, you've made it clear that you are a true Olympian. And I walked out of his office and I walked by a group of women stretching, a group of my teammates stretching, and that was like basically the group that was going to make the team. And I couldn't even look at them because I knew that if I looked at them, I was going to cry. I just walked right by them. And one of my friends said, I watched you walk away, and I couldn't believe that that was like, this is Caryn Davies. She's like one of the best athletes, one of the best rowers in the country. I can't believe this is how her Olympic career ends. But that wasn't how it ended, because over the next few days, I got lots of messages of thankfulness and support from these teammates that a year before had told me that they didn't like me and they thought I was entitled and they didn't want me around. And that was when I realized that I won something better than another Olympic gold medal, something ultimately more important. And that's the love and the respect of my teammates.
Oh my God, I love that. I had no idea. Okay, well, first, did they go on to win?
No, they didn't.
Well,
They did not medal in Tokyo.
well,
And
that coach karma right there.
and a lot of them are still competing, so we'll see how it goes in
Yeah.
Paris. But
Okay.
I'm their biggest fan.
No, that's amazing. And you know, there's so many, obviously yours are much more extreme, but there's so many parallels. Like, I think being an athlete is like being strong, about being strong and like, you know, showing that you can do it. And sometimes similar vibe to a CEO, like it's hard to be vulnerable and it's hard to like ask for feedback or whatever else. But what an amazing thing. And actually, I will say personally, we've been working together a while, and I don't know whether it's your child or like that lesson that your energy and who you are today is just you know, you have grown so much, which is just so lovely to see, and what a wonderful, I suppose, story for you to share to end this. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy that you are on this journey with us at OpenSporship, and you know, congrats for everything you've achieved and so much more for you,
Yeah.
which it was so excited to see. And you know, I hope everyone's enjoyed this, and I hope that my own team definitely will see this, and hopefully we'll get you some more sponsors because you deserve it. And but thanks so much for everything that you've done for us, for US rowing, for global rowing, and every college you've ever been with, every team you've ever been with. But well done and thank you.
Thank you. It's been wonderful. Likewise, seeing OpenSporship grow and change over the years, and just to see how much success you're having now. So may that continue through Paris and beyond.
I love it. Thank you, Khan. Thanks all. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.